Mary McCain says, how can I maintain my coherency when I'm in the middle of an important period of time? And I think we can change that to say when I'm in the middle of saying something. I think that's what Mary is going for. Mary as in Marilyn Monroe, apparently. So, this is a really good question. Let's say what the problem might be. You have a lot of things to talk about, and you want to make sure that when you're in the middle of talking about one thing, that you're able to move on to the next thing without getting lost, right? And maybe an interesting way to think about it is to think about what I'm doing right now. So I haven't seen Mary's question before. I didn't know she was going to ask it. And so I'm trying to answer her question in a coherent, somewhat, hopefully, coherent and logical way without getting lost in my head. Now, if I'm successful in doing that, then we can ask ourselves the question of what's going on in my head when I'm talking about a question like this, when I'm answering a question like this. And I can answer that pretty simply. What I'm doing is I'm outlining points in my head. Now, that may seem a little difficult, but if you practice it, it really is very effective to have a little map in your head, and you go from one point to the next, and then your only question is, how do I say it? If you can do that, if you can get good at that, then it's much less likely that you will get lost in what you're saying, right? So this is a thing we do we start in middle school, even in high school. We are asked by our teachers to write about something we read, a passage, a summary about something, a short essay, 3 or 4 pages, 4 to 5 pages. In university, 25 to 100 pages. But it's all the same thing. What you do first is you write the bones down on a piece of paper. You take a piece of paper, or you do it on your computer, and you write down a basic structure. But you try to keep that as simple as you can. These are simply, it's not what you're going to say, really. It's not the full thing, rather. It's not the whole description. It is just the basic ideas in the correct order. So, I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to give 2 examples. Then I'm going to talk about the next thing. I'm going to give 2 examples. Or, if it's simpler, like a question like this, I'm going to mention my own experience, then I'm going to give a specific example and some background information, and then I'm going to give a recommendation. Something like that. Now, to do that in your head and on a piece of paper, I realize 2 very different things. But it's the same idea. What you can do then is start by making simple outlines on paper and then speaking to those ideas. So you ask yourself a question, any sort of open question that takes a couple minutes to answer. Then you make a simple outline mentioning the things that you want to talk about. Think of this as a map. I'm going from this point to this point. Following that, I'll go to this point, and then I'm going to stop. It's just a map. If you can do it in 1 word for each point, great, fantastic, as long as you know where you're going. In my head, I know where I'm going right now. Right? Where am I going? Then you speak that, ideally recording, right? You talk through your points. You talk through your map. You look at your map. You can sit there and stare at the map if you want to the whole time. And you just talk through it for a couple minutes. Okay, step 1. Well, that's step 1 and 2. Then you try to do that in your mind. You ask yourself the same question, or maybe a different question, and instead of writing it down, take a couple of seconds to think about just the main points. This, the next, and the next thing. Okay, 3 things. That's all I have to remember. 3 things. 1, 2, 3. Okay, got it. Then you talk about those things. Now, there are a lot of different methods for remembering these. If there are many points, there's a technique called the memory palace that I've talked about before, which is extremely powerful. Public speakers use it. People who remember many numbers, like the digits of pi, use it. It's very powerful. But if it's just a few points, then just remember those 3 things. Practice talking through them. Then push yourself a little further. Rather than giving yourself a few seconds to think about it, try to just start and build your map as you go, which is what I generally do when I answer a question like this. I'm building a map as I'm speaking so that I know what I'm moving toward after I say something. And as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, okay, then what's the next thing? And it just gets easier with practice. That's all it is. So you practice it, starting with a piece of paper, starting with your map, and then go from there and keep pushing it so that it's always a little bit challenging or very challenging. And you'll get good at it, and you'll find yourself doing it in conversations. I use it in conversations. When I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm building maps about what I'm saying so that I don't get lost, so that I don't become one of those people who start rambling on about things that have no relevance to what I'm really trying to say because I got lost over there. That's what I don't want to happen. I want to prevent that. So I build a map. Hopefully that works. It certainly works for me. If you guys try it out, let me know how it works for you. Start with a piece of paper. Start by writing it down, okay? If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Also, would appreciate a thumbs up or a like. That really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, check out my full courses in the links in the description.